You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Are we not at the point now in college basketball where we have got a much clearer picture on where things are and the direction in which things are going? First of all, 14 teams from the SEC made the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Kind of comical because people were saying, going, no way, it's not going to be more than 9. Really? I know. A little bit of an ego trip here to start the fast lane, but hey, it is what it is. And I'm not happy about this, but it's the understandable nature of where college sports are going. And let's be real here. There really was not a lot of great action for the first weekend of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And I'm not one who believes that you'll never get other conferences going to the Sweet 16. We've seen this happen before. I still think it's possible. Most notably, the West Coast Conference or the Pac-12 or wherever Gonzaga is playing, as long as Mark Few is there, which I don't think's a given. Something makes me want to say that while Villanova, and reports are out, and Jay Wright mentioned this last week on, I think, speaking with John Arand of Puck, formerly Sports Business Journal, that Villanova's looking at active Power 5 coaches. But, Mark Few is just the name that keeps creeping into the back of my mind. I have no credible insight that Mark Few would leave Gonzaga to go to Villanova. But it's a lot easier in the Big East than in other conferences. And while no Big East team is in the Sweet 16, St. John's maybe could have gotten there, kind of did what New York teams do. Lots of bluster and bravado, lots of hype and excitement, which is often a little bit overboard. And then when the pedal meets the road, or the rubber meets the road and the pedal meets the floor, they underperform. I mean, it's kind of New York sports in the 21st century here. Let's keep it real here. Outside of a New York Yankees championship and a couple for the Giants, this is more big talk. They're like my dog that's blind. Big bark, minimal bite. He has 5 teeth. I mean, that's kind of what New York sports is. So it's kind of amusing to look at that. But St. John's could have gone to the Sweet 16. Obviously, UConn, they've got the greatest coach right now in men's college basketball, as immature as he is when losing happens and temper tantrums go their way. The Big East will crash the party again in the Sweet 16. Gonzaga, Pac-12 soon. I could easily see that as well. And I'm not ruling out a Cinderella run here or there. Now, sustained Cinderella runs are going to be really difficult for mid-majors, as if they weren't already. VCU made it to the Final Four. They did not get back recently. Meanwhile, George Mason, they made it in Jim Laranaga's time. Couldn't go back. Jim Laranaga eventually left, goes to the University of Miami, among other places. It's just unlikely that you're going to see these things pop up. And so I'm never one to say that you're going to get anything else right now. It's more the reality that this is the nature of college athletics, where you're going to get the Sweet 16 dominated by higher seeds. The first seed through the 4th seed, 1, 2, 3, 4, made college basketball. Trust me, there's a local angle to this. We'll get to this in just a second. It made college basketball this past weekend. But of the teams in the Final Four, it's all power conferences. 4 conferences are represented. The ACC, they've got 1 with Duke. I eventually think they'll get more in as the bottoming out and the brain drain goes away. Virginia, I think, is in the right spot with Ryan Odom. May have been the obvious choice, but I do think he was the right choice. North Carolina, questionable with Hubert Davis, but if it doesn't work next year, they'll move on. They'll get a big name. Miami, I'm more skeptical on Jay Lucas and Luke Laux at Florida State than others are, but hey, if they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, they'll have a chance. I am bullish on Louisville with Pat Kelsey long-term, and Clemson, they flirted with the Final Four under Brad Brownell previously, even as a football school. So I don't think it's all gloom and doom, much less SMU. Boy, what a way to get your new athletic director when the head coach of Maryland throws him under the bus. So you're going to get that. This is just where you are right now in college athletics. This is just the reality of the nature of it. And so you're going to see more on college sports and see more of these challenges. But what we also learned over the weekend is the Habs have a much easier chance because they're going to have better players. They're going to get the experienced players who will transfer up. And what we've seen in the Commonwealth of Virginia has only verified that. Virginia Tech fans are freaking out because Ryan Jones became the fourth, fifth player to enter the portal. He, Jaden Young, Patrick Wessler. God, who are the other two that are entering the portal that I've forgotten? Brandon Rechsteiner, I believe, was one of them that entered. And then one more, his name I'm mentioning, this case. But they've had 5. Yeah, I said Jaden Young, by the way, Trey. 5 Virginia Tech Hokies. David Cunningham will get a straight 535 covering the Commonwealth. But the theory behind it is they're going to be, for Virginia Tech, more
dollar bills, y'all,
at work. So they're going to have a better chance to upgrade their roster. And then JMU, Longwood, VCU, and Virginia are all tied together. Now, before we get the elephant in the room out of the way, Liberty lost. Their 3-pointers didn't go. And the way their roster was constructed, particularly with the injuries to Josh Smith and Isaiah Enan, I still think Liberty is the closest of the non-power programs in Virginia to consistent, sustained success in all sports because they have more
dollar bills, y'all.
Even though their conference is not as desirable as VCU, which, by the way, to their credit, they've proven that they can have a good head coach, and they've cycled through a number of them at VCU. Shaka Smart, my guy, NC State coach Will Wade, finally there. Kudos to him for being honest the entire time. And then, obviously, Virginia's Ryan Odom. And Mike Rhodes. Forgot that one, too. There have been all sorts of them. But JMU's top scorer, Bryce Lindsey, enters the transfer portal. They're another one of their starters, just announced earlier today, AJ Smith. He's going portaling as well. Look, this is the reality where you are in college athletics. Liberty will lose a couple here and there. I don't count guys like Kyle Yu and Will Gibson transferring. They hardly played for Liberty. You can kind of overcome that. But for the Flames, for the most part, they can be competitive relative to their peers for keeping people around. And here's what you saw this past weekend. You're going to take a flyer here or there. I don't think Richie McKay is as apt as, let's be real here, Hugh Freeze to take some character risks. But they did take some injury risks. Isaiah Enan's had multiple knee injuries before. Josh Smith banged up as well. It's why 4-star talent like that are available to Liberty. But you're going to have years where it doesn't work out or you're debilitated in certain areas. And when the threes didn't fall for Liberty, they really struggled to drive to the rim. And let's be real, they were honest about that. Richie McKay mentioned that when the threes didn't go for the Flames over the weekend, the Ducks' length at the rim was just too much to compensate and give Liberty a chance to have another avenue to score.
Man, their length at the rim with Biddle and Angel and Cook and Evans, it's a hard equation for us. So having that much depth, and like tonight was one of the few nights that we've had in February and March where, man, you need Isaiah Enan or Josh Smith to get a little bit more depth on the bench. But again, I give them the credit. They did a terrific job game planning for us, and their scheme was difficult.
Yeah, I mean, look, tip your cap where it is. And that's the reality is Oregon, once again, more resources than the Liberty Flames have. I mean, they do. Liberty's in a great spot relative to Group of 5 athletics. And I know people hate that term, but I'm just trying to come up with a way to say you're not part of the Power 5 in basketball or Power 4 in football. I lump the Big East in as a power basketball conference when reports are that every school in the Big East is spending at least $3 million in NIL. So that's part of what's worth considering. Again, part of remembering that. But for the Flames, that was it. There just weren't the answers. And they had them on their roster. Injuries were an issue. I don't think this is a challenge. And Richie McKay, they'll probably lose some other guys to the portal, but Liberty's going to be a desirable spot, and they are. There's the myth out there that it's just Virginia light. They only play defense. It's the race to 50. That really wasn't the case for the Flames. I know they barely got above 50 in basketball this past Friday night, but that's because the threes didn't fall, at which point, as Kata Matheny noted afterwards, part of it was Liberty, part of it was also Oregon, and it was kind of the combination of that doomed the Flames.
Yeah, they did a great job, obviously. I think it kind of took us a couple minutes just to settle in, and we were getting great looks there for a minute. But once they got up big, then obviously we started trying to rush a little bit and trying to get it back. Sometimes in one possession, obviously that doesn't work, but we got some looks that we wanted, but there were two big guys down in the paint, clogged up some looks at the paint, which gave us some struggles. And obviously, shooting the way we did, we got up 37 threes or whatever it was. Usually when we get up that many, we're pretty happy, but obviously not tonight.
Look, this is going to oversimplify it from Liberty's standpoint, but I don't think they're as far away from sustained success as other programs. Injuries are going to happen. Yes, that's part of the reason why you're going to get some 4-stars that'll come to Liberty when, let's be real here, you're probably not going to get them if they're healthy, because if they are healthy, other schools are going to pay more and they're going to be in more desirable conferences, and that's just going to factor into the equation. But Liberty, comparatively speaking, will have at least an opportunity. And sometimes the injury luck's going to work out, sometimes it's not. But the other part to Liberty is sometimes you're just going to have an off night shooting threes. It has happened to the best teams in college basketball, where the 3-point shots just don't fall. How often for years, before Jay Wright finally got over the hump, did Villanova have teams where the 3-point shot just didn't fall and they couldn't get over the hump? Before Gonzaga made the Final Four, or Gonzaga, or however they're pronounced, please forgive me, not our team in the backyard, but whatever, Mark Few's team. How often did they fail to make the Final Four because the threes didn't fall? Houston's another example of that. They're a grimy defensive team. They will grind you into a pulp. How long have the injuries and the lack of threes been an issue? Sometimes those things just happen. I'm less worried about Liberty. It's an issue compared to an Oregon or compared to other programs. But I think Liberty's the best position to overcome that. But the rest of the programs in the Commonwealth of Virginia, this is where the weekend really is shown it. Because Liberty, I think, could be a Gonzaga East. I think they could get to that point where they have a chance to at least be in the NCAA tournament regularly relative to their conference. Much like in football, especially with Rich Rod leaving Jacksonville State, they should be a Conference USA champion. And just by virtue of that, there's always going to be a chance to make the college football playoff. And if you continue to position yourself, you'll make a couple of those. You'll be more desirable. You'll have other opportunities. And it may not be getting guys to come out of high school and stick around, but you'll also be a desirable place where bounce backs can come in. And you may have years like last year where the pieces just don't fit for Liberty football, but you'll have other years like this where, even with the injuries inside for Liberty, they actually did a good job with players. Javon Mothmer was great. Owen Aquino was fantastic. Talon Peter, let's be real here, he should have been given more consideration for first team All-Conference USA and maybe Conference USA Player of the Year. So they hit more than they missed in the portal, and if that's the result for Liberty, sometimes you're going to get this far. I still think it was a good season for Liberty basketball. Now, the big concern I would have, if I'm a fan of another school in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is what we've seen over the past weekend. Because VCU just lost their men's basketball coach to Virginia. And on top of that, Longwood did as well. Because Griff Aldrich, friend of ours in the fast lane, had been on a couple times when they made the NCAA tournament. He's bailing and going to follow Ryan Odom, with whom he had coached at UMBC, to the University of Virginia. We're seeing this more often. This is one of the things about Liberty that's, I think, less likely to be a scenario than at other places. It's less likely, despite the fact that, some people around Jamie Chadwell, rumor has it, they may want to be closer to the beach. Hey, he makes $4 million a year. Buy a beach home. You can use the private plane. Liberty's got one. You can go whenever you want. Let's get this in perspective. But Liberty's not far. They're 3 hours from the beach, and you could take a private plane and get there in like 30 minutes. You could get there faster, and you could literally drive to the airport, fly, land at the airport, and get to your beach house in the same amount of time it takes to get from Liberty University over to Salem, Virginia. So put that in perspective. But from the Flames standpoint, they're in an okay spot. They're in a pretty good relative to their competition. The others are the ones where I'm concerned. How do you get better than Griff Aldrich at Longwood? JMU, now they've replaced good coaches before, but it's harder than it's ever been before. And likewise, much like March Madness has kind of distinguished the haves versus the have-nots, Virginia basketball, they're in that spot too, where the haves are clearly there for UVA. Will they get back to the top of the ACC and winning national championships? No. No doubt they can. No guarantee they will, but no doubt they can. But for Virginia, Ryan Odom mentioned this in his introductory press conference. They need it, and they're going to have it, as Kenny Powers would say.
Dollar bills, y'all.
In this day and age, NIL matters. The ref share obviously is happening and a real thing. Virginia, in talking with Carla and talking with President Ryan, the goals are very simple. We want to be top 10 in the country. In order to do that, you have to have the resources. And certainly, that's where we're at right now.
Chris Coleman, friend of ours, TechSideline.com, covers Virginia Tech. And he had this article out years ago about Justin Fuente flirting with but not taking the job at Baylor University. Think everybody might have wished that have happened. Oh, the what ifs would have happened. Virginia Tech might have gotten an upgrade sooner. Fuente might not have been unemployed. I know he got a nice buyout, $8.5 million to go away. But It was a shot across the bow, is what Chris Coleman termed that from TechSideline.com. Tony Bennett's retirement may have had that effect on the University of Virginia because as great as Bennett is as a person and as great of a basketball mind as he is, this era is not an era in which he wanted to play. And it was a wake-up call to Virginia that Tony Bennett could mask a lot, and they were never going to force him out, nor should they have, given what he did to that program. But as selfless as Tony Bennett is, realizing the time had come for him to step away from the program, multiple things can be true. He had earned the right to step away when he wanted. But his stepping away also exposed the fact that he kept trying to do it in the old model where you bring guys in for a period of time and it's not about money. Ryan Odom clearly mentioned that point. We need it and we're going to have it. And our goal is to be a top 10 team. Look, let's be real here. You want to be a top 10 team in college basketball, you got to be willing to pony up
Dollar bills, y'all.
for any player that might potentially come, because that's the reality of how most conversations begin. And this is an interesting point. No money was discussed today in great detail when Ryan Odom met with the media at his introductory press conference. But catch this nugget from Matt Norlander of CBSSports.com and the Eye on College Basketball podcast. He had this point when he spoke on CBS Sports HQ about Matt Norlander at UVA and the fact that they're going to have a substantial financial war chest that I don't know if Tony Bennett ever wanted to have, and therefore I don't think he pushed hard for it. But I think I've gotten on Carla Williams and UVA's brass a lot, and a lot of it's justified. But if there's one thing that they deserve credit for, they all of a sudden have money in football. How good of a coach Tony Elliott is and what he can do with it is up for debate. I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. Women's basketball. Alexis Ohanian wants to bankroll the program. Hey, Reddit co-founder, husband of Serena Williams, multi-millionaire worth 9 to 10 figures in that ballpark. He's got the funds. But everybody else is kind of realized basketball needs that. And Matt Norlander mentioned that when Ryan Odom said at his introductory press conference, they want to be a top 10 program and it starts with money, Matt Norlander got more specific.
You know, this information is sourced going back months, but Virginia, between NIL fundraising and expected revenue sharing, I mean, it is anticipating to have a massive, massive leap in its financial war chest, north of $7 million all told. And that is a very drastically different situation than what Tony Bennett had when he opted to retire. So the ACC is also down. As we speak, we are going to have a second round of the NCAA tournament, and the ACC will have one team left. That is, of course, Duke, and that has not been the case since the tournament expanded to 32 teams in 1975. So the entry point is as low as it could possibly be in the ACC. And if Odom is as good as Virginia thinks he is, then he's going to have that program back in the NCAA tournament no later than 2027.
Oh, I don't dispute that. I think it could be as soon as next year. Pat Kelsey did it at Louisville. And yes, he benefited from a down ACC where they played Duke early in the conference schedule. And honestly, I don't know if it mattered when Louisville played Duke. Duke's really good. Louisville was better, but not great. Clemson, Duke was going to lose a game in conference play. They did at Clemson. It's highly difficult to go undefeated in conference play. Duke lost narrowly on the slick floor at Clemson. By the way, shout out to Roanoke native Roger Ayers for sensing a slick floor at the end of Liberty's blowout against Oregon to check the floor so that he could have a dead ball and allow J.C. Shire of Liberty to enter the game. Actually, it's a really cool team. I mean, who the hell cares? It's a 30-point game. If you're going to, like, I get the officials out there may get upset and the, by the book people. I'm all for being by the book. Like, sorry, Trey. James Bradbury technically held wide receiver in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And technically, whether it should be enforced or not is up for debate, but he technically committed holding. I'm cool with that. In that moment, there's a moment to just say, screw by the book. 30-point games are one of those moments. And that was the reality. I know we're taking a little bit of a detour. I'm not even going to play the bite, but Trey has to chime in.
No, I just asked for consistency in officiating, and they weren't going back to the Super Bowl. They weren't consistently calling it. Like, if they called it all game, I probably wouldn't have been as upset as I am now. But granted, I think if I don't care anymore because the Eagles, if I had the camera on me, I'm wearing the Super Bowl champions hat. But after that beatdown, I kind of get, hello world. I get, I don't care anymore. But Roger Ayers, it's come on. I think there was another example of this. I think it was in the Big East tournament, or no, it was Providence's last home game. The person that is getting crapped on today is Danny Hurley, and Danny Hurley called a timeout because he saw Providence wanted to sub in some walk-ons for their final game of the year. Like, those moments should happen. If it's a blowout, like, the walk-on should be able to play and say they got to play an NCAA tournament game. Like, who Who cares? If you're upset about that, then you have a bigger issue. And in the world, you're probably one of those people that, the classic Charles Barkley quote, like in your grandma's basement with the drawers on, complaining. So that's like, let's get real here. Come on, like grow up, be an adult. And to your earlier point, I think about Liberty, I would argue VCU, and we kind of had this argument pre-show, and it's not more about Liberty. I just think if I'm thinking of basketball and money allotment, I'm going to go with the school that doesn't have a football program. It just makes more sense. Like Liberty, Virginia might be unique, but like Virginia Tech, they're always going to allot more money to football. Same thing goes at Liberty. But maybe with this house settlement, which we don't know, it kind of naturally creates a certain budget for basketball where this could still work. Now, could Liberty still run Conference USA and be a really good mid-major program? Yes, I think Liberty and VCU probably are the two best could be the two best consistent mid-major programs in the state. It's just, if you have this much turnover and still this much success, like, you could argue VCU is the second most successful program in the state this century. Obviously, Virginia is number one because they won the title.
Where I'll blow back, and I know these are reports, but this is Virginia Business, magazine or whatever the website is now, virginiabusiness.com. Liberty's endowment. This was a couple of years ago.
Oh, it's a lot of money.
It was over $2 billion. So they have the financial resources to go toe to toe with bigger programs. And look, if it's Liberty, big money, and let's just go Kentucky men's basketball, big money. If all things being equal, Kentucky's winning that out.
But it's also it's Kentucky basketball. Like Mark Pope ain't leaving Kentucky basketball, becoming the head coach at Liberty. Granted, he went to. No. I agree about the money. It's more of like I think if let's say there's this 4-star quarterback that Liberty can get versus the 4-star power forward that they can get.
If they had to pick one, they're picking quarterback.
They're picking the quarterback, whereas VCU doesn't have to pick the quarterback.
I'll also say
that's the thing. Like I don't want to say 100% because VCU likes having a really good baseball program, but like VCU's focus is basketball, whereas Liberty's focus is football. And that's my point.
Well, but the other bigger picture point I was going to say about this weekend is JMU's top scorer and 2 of their starters have entered the transfer portal today.
And they're going to go power.
They're going power forward. They're basically
Tive.
they're going to get a pay raise. Let's just call it what it is. They're going somewhere where they can get a pay raise.
Vanderbilt.
Quite possibly. Or somewhere else. Although those were 2 guys that came in under Preston Spradlin, so I don't think the loyalty to Byington at Vanderbilt is quite as strong.
That's fair.
But JMU has got that. So JMU's dealing with it. Longwood just lost their coach to Liberty. And we've seen in college football, smaller school coaches go to powers. I don't think you're likely to see a McKay at Liberty or a Chadwell at Liberty bail to be an assistant coach somewhere else. Liberty can keep them financially, and they can give them more than enough resources to at least be at the top end of Conference USA with a chance to make their sports respective big playoffs. Basketball is obviously easier than football, even if it's a one-bid basketball, because
I agree.
You don't have to go through all the power, all the G5s.
And that's another thing is VCU will have multiple, like VCU doesn't necessarily need to win their league to make the NCAA tournament. We've seen the A10 get multiple bids. We have not.
I don't think they're getting more than like 2, maybe 3 in the future because they're getting condensed, but you're right.
Yeah, but when you're in a program where I'm assuming St. Bonaventure's is going to be better because of Woj. Like he has too many connections, and I think he's creating enough. Like you're going to have St. Bonaventure be improved. You have
Steph Curry's money at Davidson.
The school that Ty didn't know today, Loyola Chicago, which has been to a Final Four.
By the way, that's one of my favorite parts of the morning warm-up is just you keep stumping Ty.
Well, no, what's worse is Phillip, man.
Oh my God, typical young kids.
Ty's got a winning record at least. But Phillip is we hopefully you can pick it up. But you have George Mason, who's been to a Final Four. You have Rhode Island, who's been a really good program. You have St. Louis, who's been a really good pro. Like they have really good basketball programs. Like they are very. If you want to call a conference Big East light, the A10 is probably Big East light, just because it's a bunch of mainly Catholic schools that are mainly football only. So kind of like what the Big East is. So, but I don't know. Honestly, with this stuff, like I think Liberty and VCU will honestly be, if you want to say Tech and UVA will be the top 2 programs going forward, just because they'll have the money, I would probably rank VCU and Liberty a 3 and 4, and they'll probably flip-flop every year. And there'll be some years like this year, the best program in the state was clearly, or the best team in the state of Virginia was clearly VCU. I think they're a top 30 net team. Like, they were like one of the better teams in the country. They clearly just faced a monster in BYU who's going to go to the Sweet 16, and I would not be shocked by the time we talk next week or in the Final Four. Don't think it will happen, but wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, none of that
But-
would.
But my point being, I think you're right that I think there are only 2 options here. And it's VCU because they have the same success with multiple coaches, and not football to basically, unlike JMU, like JMU will pay for football before they play for basketball. VCU just has basketball. And then Liberty, who has enough to afford both, kind of like Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Liberty's worlds apart from JMU, with all due respect financially. You know, Bob Chesney at JMU is making $800,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's
and-
what Jamie Chadwell was making before Liberty gave him a 5-fold increase to come to Liberty. I don't even know if he's gotten a pay raise. It doesn't matter. He's getting so much money relative to G5 coaches. It's basically a, hey, if you want to try to compete with Liberty in the G5 athletics, good luck, because of the resources that Liberty has. And you can't directly pay players now, but once that's allowed, Liberty they've already said they're going to do the rev share. And
yeah.
of all the schools in the Commonwealth that you could go, hey, could they do rev sharing with their athletes? Liberty's easily, I mean, a $2+ billion endowment tells me that easily, if Liberty wants to get into the pay for play, they're better positioned than some power programs, but certainly better than the peer schools in the state. So just from a raw finances standpoint,
Yeah, outside of Tech and Virginia.
Yeah.
Tech and Virginia.
well, correct. I mean, and Tech and Virginia also have that money, but the difference is they have the prestige. Even laugh all you want, there are power programs. They're in the Power 4. Liberty's not. So
Yeah, Liberty's not paying, like Tech and UVA say, hey, you get to play Miami, you get to play Florida State, you get to play Clemson, you have a direct path to the college football playoff, whereas Liberty does not have a direct path to the college football playoff. Theoretically, they would, but even if, like, look, you know, the one time they went 13-0, there was still a debate that they were going to get in. Granted, that school they were debating with is no longer in the or in the group of 5. But my point being that I think in football, they're the clear number 3. Like, they're the clear number 3. And that I don't think is for debate. Like, I agree. It's basketball where at the end of the day, they're a football school. I feel like just because they've gone with the flashier stuff with football, the Hugh Freezes of the world, Richie McKay has been really good, but they've been consistent in basketball. They haven't gone out and gotten the flashy guy where they probably could have.
he's qualified for multiple NCAA tournaments. I say that
Like,
because the COVID year robbed them. of
Okay,
one.
this is going to sound bad, but like the Will Wade thing would have been very similar to the Hugh Freeze things if Liberty did it, but they weren't going to do it because they have Richie McKay, and that's not me to But I'm just saying
they don't need to.
they don't need to, whereas they did for football. I think they're trying to use football to establish themselves, and in terms of like a viable sport, like a viable athletic department, so that that's why they got into Conference USA, because they invested heavily in football. So they're going to keep doing that to try to, the next time this realignment happens, do another jump up.
Speaking of viability, when we return, the viability of JMU, I don't think they're in a destitute place by any means, but the road is challenging, and Shea Metlin will discuss that with us next to kick off covering the Commonwealth. Plus, UVA, Tech, Liberty, and NASCAR, all still to come right here on the VTRN Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
The Black Crows, Mount Joy, Government Mule, JJ Gray and Mofro. Need us to continue? Paul Coffin, the California Honey Drop, Larkin Poe. And that's just a handful of acts performing at Floyd Fest 25 Aurora, July 23rd through 27th at Festival Park in Floyd. Ticket prices increase April 1st. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com. Winner of the Best Music Festival, even more acts to be announced soon for Floyd Fest 25 Aurora. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com before prices increase April 1st.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood, offered by Oakwood Villas Retirement Homes, LLC, the best kept secret in Bedford. Our stunning community offers spacious, one-level modern villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy a walk through our landscape community, connect with neighbors in our clubhouse, and take in the views of the peaks. Visit thevillasatoakwood.com or contact Robin Lee Sage at 434-238-4477, brokered by Legacy Realty and Development.
Do you have a sports card and memorabilia collection?
Wow.
Did you inherit one? Not sure what to do with it? BNC Sports has been your local hobby store for over 30 years, and they'll provide their professional assessment and can cash you out. No collection is too big or too small, so don't drop the ball. Stop by the mall or give us a call. BNC Sports, the game starts here.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice.
Hey, this is Virginia Tech analyst and former Hokies tight end Mike Burnup. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
If there's any consolation, it's not just JMU losing players to the transfer portal. One of the top scorers as well from Troy entering the transfer portal. It's the reality for a lot of the schools outside the power structure of college athletics. And joining us now to discuss that is Shane Mettlen to kick off.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
Shane Mettlen, DNRonline.com, and it's Shane_DNR Sports to connect with him. Shane, great to be speaking with you. AJ Smith, he follows Bryce Lindsey, 2 starters from JMU, including their leading scorer entering the transfer portal. Tayton Connerway, by the way, of Troy, joining them from the Sun Belt. So if it's any consolation, everybody in the Sun Belt seems to be losing players. Is this just a lot in life for a school like JMU until there are some kind of formal employment structures to these athletes/students?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, there's a lot of really good players in college basketball. So some of them are going to trickle back into the mid-majors too. But I think the toughest part is you don't really build those teams where, okay, now we've got 3 guys who have started for us for 3 or 4 years and we're building around that as much anymore. I think that's where it gets tougher for the mid-major programs like a JMU or other teams in the Sun Belt is, you know, it's just really harder to keep a team together for very long and have that veteran group, you know, 3 or 4 years down the line. But I wouldn't worry too much about, you know, the talent level coming back. But, you know, the continuity, I think, is a tough thing.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while, and we'll obviously have a chance to delve into that even further. From inside JMU, I mean, we've seen situations like Indiana where they mentioned that, you know, Darren DeVries, their new head coach, they had their eyes on him back in like January and February. And, you know, other schools are seemingly in similar situations. Is this kind of the understood reality that for Preston Spradlin, this was not a shock by any means that Bryce Lindsey enters the portal, the bigger name in particular, along with AJ Smith? And they made the efforts to keep him, but they kind of have known all along they have to have contingency plans?
Yeah, I'm definitely not surprised because he's a guy who, you know, one, he's got 3 years of eligibility left. So that makes him even more enticing to some programs out there. You know, maybe they can keep, you know, if you have the money to keep him around for 3 or 4 years. I mean, I think the pitch for JMU for a guy like that all along had to be, give us 1 more year. Look, we got 1 more year Janai Broom, and then it paid off for him way down the line with that coaching staff when they were Morehead State. You know, Mark Freeman came and played 1 more year with us at JMU when he had some high major offers. And that's probably going to pay off for him, like being able to play a high level overseas. That had to be kind of the pitch, but who knows what kind of money is getting tossed around right now. Maybe it's really tough to say, okay, maybe it will pay off a little bit more 5 years from now, but I can't really pass this up right now.
JMU Sports, that's what we're discussing with Shane Metlin, who's joining us here in the Fast Lane. Shane, the last question that we'll have for you, you have a couple of these guys up. Tarleton State's Keaton Bristow, who was the WAC Freshman of the Year this year, as one name that's worth monitoring. There are a couple of others that popped up as well for the JMU Dukes, most notably a guy like Marco Milicic from Western Illinois. How much of the flip side is JMU going even lower than the Sun Belt? And there are a lot of those that are in the college basketball landscape, and they'll find guys ready to transfer up. And again, this is kind of the circle of life in modern college hoops.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the circle. You look at the roster they put together this year, it was a mix of guys who transferred up, like you said, Ohio Valley Conference type players. And then there's guys like Bryce Lindsey who, just didn't get a ton of playing time as a freshman at Texas A&M, had an injury there and wound up, looking for someplace else and spends a year at JMU. They had a mixture of high major transfers and low major transfers. You truly see which programs are true mid majors at this point, because there really is kind of an in-between spot for, these programs in the Sun Belt, Conference USA. Like there really definitely are a little bit higher, but definitely below those Power 4 schools.
We're chatting with Shane Metlin. He's at DNRonline.com and the Harrisonburg Daily News Record. Shane, always good to be speaking with you. There are other bigger picture topics that we'll get into as the offseason unfolds. In the meantime, thank you for taking a moment to join us today here in the Fast Lane.
Thanks for having me.
Now to the Virginia Cavaliers.
With JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. The big news, of course, Jerry called it last week when he joined us in the Fast Lane. He called it Ryan Odom, the leader in the clubhouse for the Virginia Cavaliers job. He ultimately takes the job, was introduced officially today, although it was announced on Saturday. Hootie, did you ever get the impression that there was even a second place contestant breathing down the neck, or was the mutual interest strong enough that Odom was always Virginia's guy and vice versa?
Well, Ed, I think both sides had other options had they desired to take them. But I think in the end, both were so impressed with each other that it was just a natural fit and almost destiny, I think, because just listening to Ryan Odom talk today about growing up here and all the ties he's had to Virginia over the years, it was almost like in his heart that if he ever had a chance to come back, that nothing could stop him in his mind. I think Virginia was so impressed with what they found in him. The more they dug into his character and his coaching and his background, the more they fell in love with him. So I think it turned out to be just a perfect fit all around.
JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe, talking some UVA basketball. How much of this fit was driven by, and maybe this is the good thing, the fact that Tony Bennett's retirement may have been the shot or the prod that Virginia needed to get serious about NIL, because since then, football NIL has come in. Alexis Ohanian has said, hey, I want to bankroll women's basketball. So they've got a benefactor there. And then for men's basketball, reports are out that the NIL is going to be up substantially. Top 10 in the nation is what Ryan Odom said the goal is, and mentioned that to get there, you have to spend money. And there are reports out there, including from Matt Norlander of CBS Sports, that you're looking at north of $7 to $8 million in NIL. Was Tony Bennett's retirement maybe the thing that spurred Virginia to realize, hey, if we want to compete in this day and age, we've got to get our act together and deploy those resources that have been untapped?
I think you're right, Ed, because I think they realized this year that the roster that they put together was just not a real competitive team in the ACC, and that they knew that if they wanted to get serious about taking the program back to where it had been, that it was going to cost some money. And then Carl Williams talked about that today, that they have built up a serious war chest, and they plan on using it. I heard Bruce Pearl say today in a radio interview somewhere that they had something like a $20 million war chest for a top 10 team. I don't know if Virginia is that high or not. Maybe it is, but it's certainly something that they're taking extremely seriously, and they know that they're going to have to bring in a higher quality athlete to be able to reach the upper echelons of the ACC again. And they have no desire to be in the middle of the pack, that's for sure.
No, and that's kind of where Virginia, they've been the last handful of years. And, it's just the natural transition maybe to a better fit right now in time with what Ryan Odom can bring. What does it say about Ryan Odom and the players that he may be able to retain? That Isaac McNeely and Andrew Rohde, they both entered the transfer portal, joining Blake Buchanan and Day-Day Ames. But pretty much this entire Virginia roster, in spite of that, stuck around for the press conference, indicating, you would think, I could be wrong, that they're at least not closing off a return to UVA.
Yeah, well, even McNeely and Rohde were there, and McNeely left himself an option. He said he could consider coming back. I think they're just going to have to get together with Ryan Odom and have some one-on-one discussions as to whether they can play in his system, because he was talking today. It's hard to play 30 minutes in his system because they're much faster tempo on offense, and they pressure on defense, and it takes a lot out of an athlete. I don't know if McNeely and Rohde are too slow to fit into that kind of style of play or not, so I'm sure that's a consideration that they'll have to give some thought to, because it remains to be seen if they can play at that speed. But I'm sure he would like to retain as many of those players as he can, but it's always good to have experience. And but he's not opposed to exploring the transfer portal either.
Yes, that's part of what will be at the disposal, the Virginia roster reconstruction and the staff and what's put together. Those are topics that we will discuss greater with JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe as the season as the offseason gets further along. Hootie, thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane. It's been great to chat.
Always great to be with you, Ed. We'll see you soon.
Jerry Ratcliffe with us here in the Fast Lane. When we come back, Liberty, NASCAR, and maybe a little Virginia Tech as well. Part 2 of Covering the Commonwealth comes your way next. This is the Fast Lane, VTRN Sports app, and Ask That Smart Speaker, open VTRN Sports.
When you're voted one of the best plumbers according to Lynchburg Living magazine, you want to hire the best. Sullivan Plumbing wants the best plumbers to join our award-winning team. Do you have a clean driving record? Do you have at least 4 years plumbing experience? Then you're a 5-star recruit, and Sullivan Plumbing would love to meet with you. Take the first step. Call Sullivan Plumbing in downtown Lynchburg or email sullivanplumbing@gmail.com.
When the thrill of playing ball turns into the agony of a broken windshield or car window, contact Apple Auto Glass. Your local auto glass repair shop on Allegheny Avenue in Lynchburg, Apple Auto Glass provide a professional assessment with the honesty from your neighbors, so you can get back to sharing the great moments this season.
Do you know what a cold climate heat pump is? They're a new generation of heat pumps from Tara Lee Mosley that provide substantially more heat than traditional heat pumps, even when it's 5 degrees outside. This means your electrical auxiliary heat runs less, saving you big time on your electric bill. And with the recent spikes in electric utility rates, that's crucial. Plus, these new heat pumps qualify you for a $2,000 federal tax credit. Contact Tara Lee Mosley for more info on the new cold climate heat pumps.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
It's natural to wonder why you should consult a legal advocate after a serious auto accident. The reason is personal injury cases are complex. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. Filing a claim isn't just about filling out a form and waiting for a check in the mail. Most accident resolutions require intricate knowledge of Virginia's personal injury laws and experience working with insurance companies. That's where Trost Law will help. Call us at 777-HURT and visit trostlaw.com so we can do the work to obtain the best result for you.
Hi, this is Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Alarming, is it? We'll find out right now in part 2 of Covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth. A look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With David Cunningham, the real D Cunna on Twitter and Instagram and TechSideline.com, Ryan Jones Jr. became the 5th Virginia Tech Hokies basketball player on the men's side to enter the transfer portal. Alarming, David, or does this continue the theme we discussed last week that after a 13-19 season and 8-12 in the ACC in men's basketball, even though there are a lot of changes for Virginia Tech, maybe it's necessary to kind of hit the reset button?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I don't think any of these transfer portal enterees, I should say, or guys who have put their name in the portal have been surprising at all. We talked a little bit about last week about some of the other ones. Ryan Jones Jr. goes in today. He's a former top 70 recruit, but he didn't play this year because he was injured and he redshirted. And all things considered, I think Mike Young's probably looking at this going, all right, well, we've got the 4 guys on the roster. We're keeping those 4 guys, Toby Lawal, Ben Hammond, Jaden Shute, and Tyler Johnson. Everybody else, you're welcome to stay. If you don't want to, you can leave. It's kind of one of those things where that might sound weird, but that's kind of how it is, I think, in this day and age in the portal, where you got to pick and choose. And you have to be really selective about who you are paying, as weird as that might sound, who you are paying to stick around. And in this situation, Ryan Jones Jr., I'm not sure right now he benefits your team. And if he wants to leave and go play somewhere else and he thinks he can be in a better situation somewhere else, I'm not sure it's worth it for Virginia Tech to spend the resources. That might sound bad, but I think that's just kind of one of those things nowadays where you have to prioritize everything. And I thought you saw that a lot with the Virginia Tech football program this offseason, where Brent Pryde, they were much more selective about who they went after in the transfer portal. I think it's the same situation here. We haven't really gotten a full chance to see who the Hokies will target in the transfer portal for men's basketball. Portal just opened today, obviously, but there's a lot of roster space, a lot of spots to fill. And Mike Young has, as we talked about before, resources. And I'm interested to see kind of where he goes. And I think he's got a pretty good young core to build around, despite all the guys transferring out, which isn't, again, surprising. You go 13-19, you expect a little bit of a rebuild.
You're going to get that, and the Virginia Tech Hokies clearly are right now. It's a little premature to really figure out exactly the direction that the Virginia Tech Hokies are going to go, since the transfer portal technically doesn't open up for another few days, as weird as that is, because the college basketball season's not done, but this is the NCAA with whom we're speaking. So we'll pivot off of that to women's basketball. How disappointing was the end of the season with a loss in the second round of the WBIT to Texas Tech, 69-59 last night?
I think it was disappointing, Ed. They played okay enough to beat North Carolina A&T on Thursday. Then you get Texas Tech on your home floor, and I thought it's tough. You're off for 2 weeks for that break between the ACC tournament and then the Selection Sunday, and then you come back, 2 weeks later, and you have to pick it back up and play very, very competitive games against teams that are pretty good. And I thought you saw the Hokies rust a little bit show in that Thursday game. I thought they were a little bit better yesterday, but they just were disjointed, disconnected just a little bit. And it is disappointing, end of the year, but I don't think it should cloud everything Virginia Tech accomplished this year. Very, very successful season in year one for Megan Duffy. You go 19, you win 19 games. You go 9-9 in the ACC. You finish 8th. I said before, and I'm sure I said it to you, Ed, I thought if the Hokies were able to finish in the top half of the ACC this season, it will be a success. And they did that. I think it was a successful season. And now Megan Duffy, she turns her attention to the transfer portal, and they have a much different situation than the men. I expect maybe 2 to 3 kids to potentially transfer out of the program, but you're looking to build around a very young but established core of players, some very, very talented kids. Karis Baker, Carly Wenzel, Mackenzie Nelson, and Lonnie White, right? There are some very, very young and talented kids. How do the Hokies supplement that? A very disappointing end to the year, but I don't think you can look too much at that. You kind of got to look at the overall picture. Yes, it is disappointing, but the run was going to come to an end at some point. Disappointing that the seniors kind of had to go out that way, but I do think it was really good experience for this next wave of players, for the kids who are going to be sticking around. Everybody can come back except for the 2 seniors you graduated in, Rose Michon, Matilda X. So next step forward, Megan Duffy talked about that last night in her press conference. I'm interested to see how the Hokies take that next step forward.
It'll be fun to see, and we'll keep up with the insight at The Real D on Twitter, Instagram, and TechSideline.com. David, great to chat with you as always. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Ed.
Now to the Liberty Flames.
John Manson, AsiaRed.com, with us here, hanging out in the fast lane. John, good to be chatting with you. Well, I guess you could tell pretty early on Friday that it was going to be one of those nights when the three-point shots didn't fall and Liberty got up over 30 of them and yet shot well under 30% from downtown. Is it that simple that sometimes you just have one of those bad nights shooting, and unfortunately for the Flames, it came at the wrong time and came pretty early to Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We talked last week about Liberty has to make shots, and they had virtually their worst shooting performance of the season. There was one other game against New Mexico State at home that they only attempted 14 threes and made 3 of them. So after Liberty made a couple garbage time threes in the closing minutes when the game was already decided and the benches had been emptied, the final percentage numbers ticked up over that number from the New Mexico State game. But shooting over 30 threes in the game and only knocking down, I think it was, 7 or 8 of them, was not going to be a recipe for success against a team, as talented as Oregon. And then you couple that together with what the Ducks did. I mean, the Ducks came out, and all credit to them. I mean, a top 25 type team, and I know they got knocked out in the round of 32 against a solid Arizona team, but just what they did coming out and, had their foot pressed to the gas pressed to all the way down to the pedal, all the way down to the floorboard, and no let up, right? And they, jumped out, hit their first few shots. Jackson Shelstad was just playing lights out, and, it was 18-2 before Liberty could even, breathe. And, basically you could use a boxing analogy and say Liberty got knocked down immediately, and the Flames just weren't able to recover. I mean, you're playing out of a 16-point deficit, just a few minutes into the game. Sure, you think you can start clawing your way back into it, but it's just too much of a hole to dig out of when you're going up against a team that's every bit as talented as you, if not more talented than you, bigger than you, and a team that's been on that stage in March Madness. And the Liberty team that did not have much March Madness, history, as far as this current roster, not many guys that had played previously. So it was just everything, like I said earlier, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and Liberty was unable to fight back and make it interesting. And, you feel like if that game was played, 10 times, Liberty can probably win a game or two out of those 10. And I think most of them, they would be a competitive game into the second half. But the one that counted and the only one that gets played was not. And you saw Oregon do something similar, last night against Arizona. I think it was 17-4, an early lead they had. And, so a very similar start for them. But Arizona has, that high major talent all over their roster. And they also have that March Madness pedigree. They've been there on that stage before, and they were able to lean on that. And, they didn't, panic. They didn't get frazzled. They were able to chip away at the lead. And before you know it, they were in the lead and ended up controlling that game in the second half and knocked out the Ducks. But yeah, for Liberty, it was just, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And, you just have to tip your hat to Oregon and their game plan and their execution of that game plan, which was as good as it could have been.
Since that loss to Oregon over the weekend and now today, Kai Yu, the center, and forwards Bryson Spell and Will Gibson all announcing they're entering the transfer portal. Was this an inevitability? Were all these inevitabilities in the sense that they didn't get a lot of playing time? A couple of them have been on the roster now for multiple years. And when you're kind of on the roster multiple years and you don't get playing time, you probably want to see what else is out there in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense for a guy like Bryson Spell. He's been around on the team for the last 4 seasons, never able to really carve out a role as far as playing time goes. And I'm assuming he probably has his degree in hand. And from everything I've heard, he's a consummate teammate. And now he's looking to finish up his college career playing somewhere where he can get some playing time, whether that's a lower D1 program or even a D2 ranks or something like that. And for Will Gibson and Kai Yu, especially Kai Yu, the 7-footer from China, came in with a lot of fanfare and his first 2 years just unable to get onto the floor. And Liberty's got a lot of, depth in front of Kai Yu going into next season. I mean, Zach Cleveland, Owen Aquino, both starting forwards are expected to return. Isaiah Enan, 6'9" forward that got injured. He's likely to return off that knee injury next year. And then you also got Josh Smith, who sat out this year after transferring from Stetson, another 6'9" forward. So those 4 guys are already ahead of Kai. And then even Xander Yates is someone who has stepped up, the second half of this season after Enan went down to that injury. So just hard to see a path for playing time, really for any of these 3. So it makes sense for them to try to, see if they can find somewhere else where they can get on the floor. I mean, and you can understand that from their perspective, and from Liberty's perspective, it gives them additional scholarships to try to give more flexibility to Coach McKay and his staff to see if they can get some of these guys to return that could potentially have another year of eligibility or go back into the transfer portal, whether that's back to the D2 ranks like the Flames did last year with Talon Peter and Javon Maltmer, or even another JUCO guy like Owen Aquino, or maybe another high major talent like Isaiah Enan looking to transfer down and have a bigger role, larger impact. So, it'll be interesting, like it is for everybody this time of year is just monitoring that transfer portal each and every day and see what type of moves are made. And I'm sure we'll have more from Liberty and Coach McKay in the coming days and weeks.
Meanwhile, the Lady Flames, they were down by double digits in the teens at Western over at Kentucky this past Friday. I'll be the first to admit, I kind of thought, all right, this game's over. And next thing you know, you turn around and they've made a game of it and they have a chance near the end, losing by 1, 79-78. What does it say about Kerry Green's squad that they went on the road at a Kentucky team? And I know this was kind of first year for Kenny Brooks. They had a lot of Virginia Tech players, but the chemistry just wasn't the same as they had in Blacksburg with Kenny Brooks and the Lady Hokies. But the Lady Flames fought to the end of this season.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a great performance, great fight back. You love to see that out of Liberty, not just rolling over and dying, right? But fighting to the final whistle. And I'm with you, Ed. That league got up over, double digits, 14, 17, late third quarter, early fourth quarter. And you're thinking, well, this one's, just academic at this point in time. But that's not what Kerry Green and the Lady Flames were thinking. They were thinking, we still got a shot. And you get a couple stops, you hit a couple shots on the other end, and you start chipping away that lead. Next thing you know, it's single digits. And, they were able to cut it down to 1 on a few different occasions, just unable to, get over the hump. And again, credit to Kentucky. That's a good team, and one of the top teams in the SEC, and they earned the right to play not just close to home, but on their home floor. And I'm sure that helped them significantly as well too. So, but great end of the season, for both the men and the women, to win the Conference USA championship. That's something, nobody can ever take away from you. And they both did it in the same year as well for the first time since 2013. So big successful seasons for both the men and the women, and something to build on as you continue to move forward and look to compete year in, year out in Conference USA for conference championships.
It'll be fun to see how Liberty builds on this women's basketball season, and heck, even the men's basketball year, which was really good. The insight, it's always great at aseaofred.com. John, thank you for joining us. We'll keep it to JC Manson and A Sea of Red on Twitter.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ed.
Our pleasure. John Manson with us here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGMA in Lynchburg, WMA Gretna, Danville, Southside. Ask that smart speaker, open VTR in Sports, or just download the VTR in Sports app if you prefer.
And last but not least, or maybe least, NASCAR.
Steven Stump of frontstretch.com. Steven, it's great to be speaking with you. Well, it finally happened, as if there was ever a doubt that it would eventually happen. Kyle Larson gets to victory lane in this past weekend's race at Homestead Miami Speedway. Does that even change your outlook for Kyle Larson, or is it always just a matter of time before the 5 crosses the line first and claims a checkered flag?
I don't think Kyle Larson winning at Homestead is a surprise at all. It's one of his best tracks. He's the all-time laps led leader there. But the way he won it was surprising. We're used to seeing Kyle Larson just dominate races, be out front, get these huge leads, and then bring it home. This was like the most un-Kyle Larson-like win, and it's because the car wasn't the best at first, and they got some damage on pit road, but they kept working at it, and by the time of the final stage, they just, even if he was in contention in the final stage, and even when it looked like he was out of it and 3 seconds back, he did the best job of conserving his tires, and he just blew the doors off of everyone, passed the top 3 cars like it was nothing, and cruised on to the win. And I think it's his 30th Cup win, and we're used to seeing Kyle Larson dominate, but I think that's also, him winning that way is equally as impressive as itself.
Steven_Stump, Twitter and Instagram, and frontstretch.com. Steven, about those cars that Kyle Larson passed down the stretch, second and third. First of all, we'll get to Alex Bowman saying, quote, "I guess I choked that one away," and speaking with Front Stretch afterwards. And of course, all the video archives are at the Front Stretch YouTube page. Was that really the case, or is Bowman being too hard on himself, considering as much as he may feel the pressure of needing a win, like you alluded to a moment ago, this is Kyle Larson, a champion and one of the best drivers in NASCAR right now on one of his best tracks?
I mean, whenever a win is there, I think a driver's going to be frustrated when it just slips away like that. But I don't think there's not really anything for Alex Bowman to be ashamed about. It is Kyle Larson. And the fact is he had, a great day all around. He won the pole, had the best average running position of the day, and had his best since 2022. He was basically a top 5 car the entire day, and he's third in points. He leads the series in top 10 this year with 5. It may not have been a win, and he got really, really close to one. But, so far that 48 team is clicking, and I think if they continue to bring cars like that, he should be finding victory lane soon as well.
Another guy, and we'll ask this one. How close is Bubba Wallace to getting to victory lane?
Much closer than I feel like most people would think. Obviously, the last 2 years had been, frustrating. He has an 85 race winless streak going on. He was close at Texas in 2023. Didn't make the playoffs last year, but that team has speed this year. He's third in stage points scored. They didn't have the finishes. He only had a 9th at Atlanta, but the team finally put a complete race together. Led 56 laps, finished third. And largely was the best 2311 car when we're used to Tyler Reddick being dominant at Homestead. So, obviously a new crew chief change that's paying dividends for the 23 team. Bubba looks like driving the best he has in a long, long time. He may not have won, but I feel like that win is just around the corner. And honestly, I feel I'd circle him, and watch out for him at Kansas, where he won his most recent race in 2022.
It'll be fun to see if that happens. We'll see what happens in Martinsville this weekend, and we'll wrap it up on this with Steven Stump. I mean, look, admittedly, as the Ty Gibbs apologist in the fast lane, I've sounded the alarm for weeks now. Was yesterday the biggest alarm raiser yet, given He had a top 10, top 15 car for much of the day. He spins. Meanwhile, his teammate Austin Cindric, who had been struggling, looks like he's gotten it together. And of course, we know Christopher Bell, a perennial championship contender, and Denny Hamlin, a perennial race winner as well.
I got to say, of all the things that could have happened to start this season, I think Ty Gibbs being 34th in points is the biggest surprise of all. I never saw this coming. In hindsight, he's working with a new crew chief in Tyler Allen. Chris Gale went to Denny Hamlin, so there's, some changes there, but they just really haven't shown anything, and it doesn't look like it's, ending anytime soon. I do think JGR isn't as good as they may look just because of Christopher Bell's 3 in a row. I think it's masking a lot of issues because, Denny was top 5, Chase Briscoe was top 5, but they didn't have winning speed. Really, outside of Bell's wins, they haven't had winning speed much this year. So it's clear that JGR is off, but the 54, Ty Gibbs, they should not be that off. And I think they're pretty much in. They have to win to make the playoffs now. And, I think if this continues any longer, there definitely needs to be some alarm bells being pushed.
Oh, indeed. We're already sounding them in the fast lane for whatever that's worth. And hopefully you've got them ready at Steven_Stumpf. You should prioritize that when you check him out on Twitter and Instagram and frontstretch.com. Steven, thanks for your insight as always. It's great to chat with you today here in the fast lane.
Great to see you again as well, and excited to be covering the race in Martinsville next week and talking with you then.
Yes, indeed. Steven Stumpf with us in the fast lane. We'll speak with him later. In the meantime, we'll speak with you tomorrow, 5 to 5:30 before Virginia Tech baseball takes over on In Progress to Make It Rain here on the VTRN Sports app.
I did not think I mean, my goodness. Clearly, if you're a St. John's fan, just makes you sick. I mean, absolutely nauseating. And listen, would have had a great opportunity to beat Texas Tech, and just really frustrating if you're a St. John's fan. So, look, I still think what it's